thank you so much for joining us. So we are Weston-super-Mare Town Council, and this is part of our commitment to climate change, that we are interviewing interesting and fascinating people that maybe can give you some hints and tips about what you can do in your own lives to be able to create a more sustainable planet, a more sustainable home, a more sustainable you. So talking of sustainability, we have with us Jen Gale, who is the author of the Sustainability-ish Living Guide. So hi Jen, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, really excited to I don't know if I've ever been described as interesting and fascinating before. That's right. That's boosted me.
It is, and I think that the journey that you went through is really interesting. So start us off, tell us about that journey. How did you get to where you are? What's happened?
So I always describe myself as a kind of ordinary knackered mum of two. And I used to be a vet, and about, was it 7 or 8 years ago, I slightly randomly decided that we were going to spend a year buying nothing new as a family. So the kids were about sort of 3 or 4 and sort of 1 or 2. Just a sort of quite naive challenge, really. I think I hadn't, I just thought it'd be quite fun and different to do. And I think I'd just discovered like Free Girl and Free Cycle, and was wondering, like how feasible it was to sort of get stuff, a lot of the stuff we needed secondhand. So decided to embark on this journey, and my husband just kind of, I think, went along for a quiet life, like a lot of husbands, hoping I would be distracted by the kind of next shiny new idea and not actually go through with it. But I did, and kept a blog about the year, so blogged every day about the things that we were doing, which actually was harder than not buying anything new. And yeah, we just as I describe it as quite a naive decision, I guess, in that I just hadn't really joined the dots between the things we were buying and the impact it was having on the planet. I thought we were quite green because we did our recycling, but I hadn't really thought at all about the stuff that we were buying, other than, like where could we get it cheapest, or, where there was an offer on or something like that. And I always say that, I think I was probably like a lot of people, in that I was kind of aware of these things going on. I was aware of, climate change. I mean, bear in mind, this was 8 years ago. This was before, Blue Planet 2, was before Greta, before Extinction Rebellion. So I was kind of aware of climate change, and that it was like not good, and aware of things like fast fashion. But I guess I sort of somehow chose to look the other way. I just sort of assumed that, like, if it was that big a deal, the government would be doing something about it. If it was, if it wasn't right for, to get 3 t-shirts for £6 or whatever, then surely these businesses wouldn't be allowed to do it, and surely they must be looking after, it must be okay, because otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. And then sort of slowly through the year realizing, like, actually this is a really big deal, and the government, for whatever reason, aren't doing anything about it, and nobody is looking after these people in these supply chains. And it was actually the same year that the Rana Plaza factory collapse happened in Bangladesh, if anyone remembers that, killing over 1,000 people. And so that really brought fast fashion sort of to the fore. And yeah, just this realization that actually every choice we're making has an impact, and therefore we have a responsibility to make different choices where we can. And I get that, sometimes there's budgetary constraints or time constraints and things like that, and that's why I talk about sustainable-ish, and the fact that, like, we don't have to be perfect, and nobody's expecting, I think when we think about sustainability and green living, we think about these stereotypes of kind of, living off grid in a yurt with your dreadlocks. And if anyone's of an age to remember, like Swampy and things like that, or, if you look on Instagram, you see all these sort of young millennial hipsters with their mason jars and their beautiful minimalist homes and things. And I kind of think I'm just like an ordinary person bimbling along trying to do my best. But that's kind of what the message I want to get out with Sustainable-ish is, that, we can all do our bit. We don't have to do all the things, and we don't have to do all the things perfectly, but we can pick out the little bits that will work for us, work out what works for us, and do those. So yeah.
Brilliant. I think what's really interesting is the fact that you gathered more information as the year went on. So it wasn't like you started the year with this kind of, you know, I have looked into the fashions I have looked into, it's just kind of like, do you know what, this would be a nice little project.
Yeah.
And then started to look into it as you went along. So what
Mm.
was the fire in your belly to want to start it in the first place without all of that background research having been done first?
I'm still not sure.
Really? Do you feel
I,
like maybe, do you know, I wonder, and I am a great believer in kind of intuitive responses to things,
mm.
you know, where you suddenly just go, do you know, this just doesn't feel right.
Well, I read an article in a magazine about a lady who was doing, she called it her secondhand safari, and she was partway through it. And I think it was just a bit of a light bulb, like, oh, that sounds fun. I wonder if we could do that. Um, and sort of emailed her in great excitement going, oh, I love what you're doing. And would you mind if we kind of copied you and did the same? And she was like, no, more the merrier. So that was the kind of, I guess, the light bulb moment. But as I said, it was just a kind of like, that sounds fun, rather than a, this is going to be my kind of, you know, my thing, my planet saving efforts and all that.
This is how I, define myself. So kids, how old were the kids when this started?
So we randomly did it like September to September, because I think I read about it in the during the summer, and I'm far too impatient to like wait until, you know, logically it would have made much more sense to go January to January, but and the kids, William, my eldest, was just about to turn 4, so he turned 4 in the October, and Samuel must have been like 1.5 or something. So they were kind of, you know, they
I want some new trainers.
no, but they were very much, I think one of the other things that sort of had been niggling away at me was, you know, like William was kind of preschool age, and you'd go into a shop and he was just automatically like, you know, like all toddlers are, like, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that. And I just, like, in hindsight, it's completely normal, you know, all toddlers do it, and I'm not quite sure why, but it was that, like, wow, he's already a mini consumer. He's 3. He's already tuned into this. New stuff is better, needing more, needing brighter, shinier, new. Like, that really kind of like, whoa. So I think that, you know, those two things combined kind of came together. So yeah, it was quite interesting.
I hear that in shops from kids, like, Mum, can I have a blah, 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 or they pick things up. I think I was a little thing for this, which is I'd pick something up and just put it in the trolley.
I hope they don't notice till you get to the checkout.
Like, what's this?
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, those kinds of things. What was the one item? I mean, I don't know timing wise about nappy training and stuff like that, so I'm making an assumption here. But what was the most difficult item for you to not buy new?
This always makes me feel really shallow, but it was magazines. Like, I really missed just, and you know, like, I had 2 you know, kids under 5 at home with me. I never really got their chance to sit down with a magazine and a cup of tea, like, but I think it was just that kind of like aspiration, you know, like, if I have this shiny magazine, maybe I will have that life or that time or that. So I really kind of missed that. I used to just enjoy when we go to the post office in town. It's in a WH Smith, so you have to sort of, you know, walk past, and I was like, oh no, we had to walk down a different aisle.
They smell of new paper. Yeah, and it is interesting. It's the weird things that you miss. So I spent a long time living on ships, and you would think that there would be like logical things that you would really crave and miss, but I missed random weird things like garlic dough balls from Pizza Express, you know. And every time we hit a shore that had a Marks and Spencer's, everybody would run
Yes,
new underwear. It would just,
and Percy Pigs
or not, you would go
yeah.
buy new underwear because Marks and Spencer's was going to get new pants.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how it's the emotional buys. Would you call it emotional buy? And also when you describe it as being something that you know, was a psychological, oh, this is my me time, this is my relaxed time as a busy mum, as you described yourself to be. So do you feel that a lot of purchasing, I mean, we often know about purchasing being emotional purchase.
Yes.
So when I had a dog, I definitely spent more on the dog than me. And I'm sure as a mum you do the same. But do you think that emotional purchases and purchases that define who we are as a human being? So this is probably why brands sell so well, because people kind of like go, this label says something about me because I'm wearing, you know, either affluence or attitude or whatever that is. So do you think that when we make decisions on cutting back, that are emotional, and I would even go as far as to call it an addiction to how we feel. Do you think that that's the hardest thing to give up, and was that the hardest thing for you?
I think it's such a complex, like, it seems such a simple thing, isn't it? Well, I'm going to go and buy this because I need a new pair of jeans or whatever. But it's, as you say, there's so much hidden emotion, I guess, behind that. You know, like if I buy a pair of jeans from a charity shop, what does that say about me? If I buy a pair of jeans that are 200 quid, what does that say about me? And we live in this society, this you know, this all sounds a bit deep and stuff, but we live in this very consumer driven society, and we are bombarded constantly with these messages that are basically telling us we're not good enough as we are. You know, they're basically telling us you will be more beautiful, you will be richer, cleverer, more popular, whatever, if you have X, Y, and Z. And, you know, like, oh, you've got those wrinkles, you need this cream, you've got, you know, and you're showing signs of aging. That's not, that means you won't fit in our society. Do you know? And as human beings, I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, but my understanding is that, you know, we have this very kind of primal urge to fit in, because, you know, if you're part of the caveman tribe, you're protected and you have all the benefits of, you know, communal food or whatever that come with that. So we're very driven to kind of fit in and to find our place, and the things that we buy enable us, I guess, to sort of mark out who we are and what tribe we're a part of. So I think there's that. And I think, you know, like, so much of what we buy, I think, is unconscious. Like, I talk about, you know, you go into Lidl's for a pint of milk and you come out with a fence sprayer, like, because and did you know the way I was before we spent this year buying nothing new? It was just like, oh, I need that, just get it. Like, or I'd be doing the supermarket shop and, you know, see a packet of t-shirts for the kids. Oh yeah, okay, they could probably do with some more t-shirts, and just chuck it in the trolley, and not really kind of think about it, other than I said, as, you know, like, what was the cheapest way to get something. And we've become very disconnected, I think, from stuff and how it arrives in our shops and all those sorts of things. And I think the beauty of that year buying nothing new, and it was completely unintentional, was that it provided this stopgap between my brain saying I want that or I need that, and being able to get it. And so actually, by the time I did find it secondhand, or, you know, I'd kind of decided, you know, I'd forgotten about it, or I didn't really need it, or I'd found something else that would do with it. And I think that just that tiny little, it's like a little switch going off in your mind. It's just, you know, it's so powerful to suddenly think, oh, hold on a minute, I don't actually really, you know, we've all done it, haven't we? Been out shopping in our lunch hour or whatever, and seen something in the shop window and gone out and bought it, and then probably never even worn it. Do you know, it's just that.
I've got a pair of glitter boots. I mean, luckily they were from a second-hand shop, but they were in the window and they were in the sunshine.
They spoke to you.
They spoke to me. You know, they spoke to me of there's no place like home. They
Yeah.
spoke to me on a number of different levels. Never worn them, probably never will. And also, they don't look as pretty without the sunlight on them.
And in the UK, that's an issue.
It is a real issue, and they're not sparkling, just sitting on my shelf gathering dust. But I absolutely could have left them for somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, absolutely. I think that those things happen a lot. Now, let's just imagine that as we are talking, there is somebody who is composing that very same email to you that you sent to that other person from that article that you read, that is going to say, Jen, I really want to follow your family story. Like, you know, give us some help here. What tips and guidance or must-dos, don't-dos would you give them if they're about to send you that email?
So I always say, like, you know, a year is a pretty extreme thing to do, but it was way more doable than I thought it was going to be. But even if you do like a month, I think that's a really powerful thing to do, because it's enough, I think, to break that kind of knee-jerk, as I said, that sort of habitual buying almost. So, do you know, like, you don't have to do a month. As with anything, you know, I'm sustainable-ish, so, you know, you could just do it for clothes, you could just do it for you and not for the kids, like, however you want to do it. Think of a way that's going to be like doable for you, but still maybe a bit of a challenge to stretch you. So that would be the first thing. And then, you know, we set ourselves some kind of some rules. So we said that we could buy food, we could buy medicines, we could buy toiletries, pants, like I drew the line at secondhand underwear, which I think most people probably would. And because the kids were little and their feet were really, really little, I said we could buy them new shoes to make sure they sort of fitted properly. So those were our rules, but make your own, make it work for you. If you're like, well, there's absolutely no way I could do without X, Y, or Z, then that's fine. That's your exceptions. Have your own things that will make it doable. Like it's, you want to have fun with it. You don't want it to be like, oh my God, I've like made my life so miserable for a month or a year or however long you want to do it. It wants, none of us will keep up with anything that, it's like, that's why really strict diets don't work, because it's really, really miserable. So think about how you can make it really, really doable and, quite fun.
Yeah, I think fun is the key. And also it sounds like it's a great way of challenging yourself as well to get rid of any kind of programming that you might have been given from advertising, from this idea of our identity. And by the sounds of it, it does make you kind of rethink who you are and what your identity is by the stuff that you buy or surround yourself with. Even advertising in the cars that you drive. Or I think what's been really great. So I mentioned to you before the call, I lived in San Francisco for a while, and having moved from London to San Francisco, I remember going to a dinner party. This is going to sound really like, so this is kind of like a weird confession, because you're going to go, God, like, you judgmental woman. But it was more shock, really. And this really explains subtle programming that you don't realise you had.
Yeah.
I went to a dinner party and we were drinking wine out of jam jars. And all of the plates, knives, everything was all a mix mash. There was no kind of like bought, dining set.
Yeah.
And with my own dining set now, as it's broken over the years, I kind of I bought it as one great thing out of Habitat, when I was given a load of vouchers. And this was my thing. I have a matching dining set. I am now
a grown-up.
Yeah. No, I've never become a grown-up. Don't worry about that. I'm still not a grown-up, but definitely an adult. I was so excited. Like, I've reached the pinnacle. I have a dining set. Now I need friends. Invite them round for dinner. And need to learn to cook. These are all small issues. I have a dining set. So being in San Francisco and finding all of this mix mash of stuff and drinking wine out of jam jars and nothing matching, and sitting on things that had been kind of made out of other things, it really just made me realize how uptight I was about image. That I could think that, God, if I did something like this, I would never dream of giving a guest a jam jar full of red wine. Although, quite frankly, I was very grateful. Grateful to just be invited.
Anything full of red wine.
Anything full of red wine would have done, apart from that. But it really is quite interesting when you go into the home of somebody who lives like, well, even that sounds lives like that. Where's that coming from? Unconscious bias. But, opening a cupboard and there being, jars of things that they have gone and bought in places. I mean, we've got a shop sadly, we had one replenished shop closed down in Weston that helped kind of like reduce plastic. We've got another one that seems to be springing up and is just about to open. And of course, that's the main key thing, is you come along with your big glass jar, you fill it up, and then you've got that stuff in your cupboard without it having arrived in plastic. So are you still continuing with things like that? Have you found all the best places to shop to remove plastic? Do you have a list on your website?
No, I don't have a list on the website, but there's a brilliant website called Zero Waste Near Me, and that will list all the zero waste shops. I don't know if it's got all of them, but it's got a really good directory of all the zero waste shops, and you can search by location, so you can put in your postcode and it will tell you where the shops are near you. So that's a really good one. I think for a long time I didn't sort of do much about plastic. It felt like too hard. I think I had it in the too hard box. And again, this was before Blue Planet 2 and all the sort of public awareness we've seen around plastic. And every year there's a campaign called Plastic Free July. And so every year I go, this year I'm going to join in. I'm going to do Plastic Free July. And then, I'd go to make a cup of tea and take the milk plastic bottle out of the fridge and go, well, I can't do it. There's no way I can do it. And again, it's that all or nothing mentality. Like, whereas actually the whole point of Plastic Free July is just to get you to think a little bit about your plastic, and can you replace like one thing or two things. And so, you know, like the whole time it is, and I will say to people when they're talking to me about plastic, the most visible plastic, I guess, is when we do our supermarket shop and we unpack everything, and then we're left with this, you know, 1 or 2 carrier bags full of plastic packaging. And it's really frustrating and annoying, and it can make us feel really cross and powerless. And but that is actually probably the hardest thing to tackle in terms of plastic, because, you know, it's part of this big system, and, you know, some of it is legitimately to do with food waste, and it's the fact that we now live in this very globalized world where food is coming from, you know, it's not just like your local farmer producing stuff and taking it to the shop, it's coming from all areas of the globe and things like this. So it's a really big system that it's a part of, and it's really hard to step out of that system, like, conveniently, and, you know, if you're within a budget. So then I sort of say to people, well, actually, like, instead of just like hitting this brick wall the whole time and feeling really cross and frustrated about it, let's have a look at the bathroom, because that's a much easier place to start. So can you, you know, everyone says, oh, like, use soap, it's the easiest change to make. This is my confession. We tried soap. We tried so hard with soap, like, but my kids just, like, didn't use it, or, you know, like, and
Didn't get
my
it.
husband didn't really like it, and I could never find a shampoo bar that worked. So our kind of plastic free-ish compromises to get the big 5-litre bottles. We order them online and then refill our own. So it's not perfect, but it's plastic less. So do you know, like, if you can't find a way that works with you, don't give up. Think about how you can find something that is less plastic. So always think about, you know, buying the biggest size of something you can afford, and maybe decanting it down. And the same comes with like cheese and pasta and things like that. You know, buy the biggest one you can afford, because it's less plastic overall. And like, we buy the big share packs of crisps and then just portion them out, rather than, you know, a plastic bag filled with 8 other plastic bags. So it's again trying to get away from this kind of all or nothing, this like, you can either do it or you can't do it. It's just about, like, pick one thing, think about how you can change it, in a way that works for you. And if you can't do it, let's look at something else. Do you know, like, plastic is really visible. It's really, once you see it, you're sort of aware of it, you can't unsee it, and you can really directly see, can't you, the cause and effect. You can drink a bottle of water or a bottle of Coke or whatever, and then you go for a walk and you see it littering, or you see those pictures on social media, and so it's really easy to join the dots. Whereas, like, climate change is more difficult. You know, it's becoming more in our faces with extreme weather events and things, but it's much more difficult to see the, like, you leave your lights on by mistake, and, you know, it's not like there's a sudden hailstorm or anything like that you can see. But actually, you know, so instead of stressing about your supermarket shop, switch your energy provider to a renewable energy provider. That is, like, hands down probably the most impactful thing we can do as individuals. Bulb have got some figures out, and they reckon it could slash your carbon footprint by up to 1/4. Like, that's massive, do you know? And you've done it. Like, once you've done it, it takes 20 minutes, half an hour, it's done. Sit back, feel smug. Like, so, you know, sometimes I think we get so obsessed with like plastic or something like that, and we actually just take a step back, look around, think about what else we can do. And yes, the plastic is still there, and it's still really irritating and frustrating, but that, some of that requires, like, system change, and we can be a part of calling for that. I think, you know, I talk a lot about the power of our choices, but we also, and the fact that we're more powerful than we realize as individuals and as families and as consumers, but also recognizing the power of our voices. So the whole thing around single-use plastics has been a public reaction to that, and a public, like, I don't want this anymore. So actually, do you know, every time you unpack your supermarket shop, if you, like, take a picture and tweet your supermarket, go, not getting any better at this, are you? Do you know, like, they will, they respond to consumer demand. They go where the money is. So if you're like, actually, I'm really thinking about taking my money elsewhere, or actually, I really want to support this local shop that's starting up, and I'm going to start spending as again, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, a proportion of my weekly budget there. Do you know, they will start to, and we've seen that with Waitrose trialing their things, and I think M&S have been trialing some zero waste stuff. So, do you know, don't forget that. That was a really long, like, covered about 29 billion things, wasn't it?
But there's also really great stuff to think about as well, because we do tend to feel like, I'm only one person.
Yes.
In actual fact, one person as part of a collective nag is a really powerful thing. And it's just taking that moment of time to go, right, I am going to tweet that image, or I am going to write that letter, I am going to, make that comment. It's just little things like that. So, even just going into the takeaway and saying, can't you use tin foil instead of, the tin packets instead of the plastic ones, or anything like that. It's just about making that voice heard. And I think it's difficult because, like you were saying before, about being the limbic brain and about our need to fit in, no longer survival of the fittest, but survival of the fittiest.
Yes, yeah, well, I like that.
It's true that we are really hardwired to worry about what other people think of us. We're actually hardwired to have feelings of inadequacy, so that we monitor ourselves to fit into the tribe. And that, as you had rightly said, is where marketing kind of like takes over from that. So in essence, sometimes we don't want to be that moaning, complaining,
that person, do you? Yeah.
But then also as well, I also don't want to be that overwhelmed, climate change aware person who just feels sad, at the state of the planet. And if you want, given a choice of being naggy, moany person who just is a fly in the ointment, or being the person who is kind of, sad at seeing forest fires, I'll take the first option.
But I think that there are ways of doing it as well. Like, you don't
positively fun about it.
So if you see a shop that's doing something really well, like, tweet them as well. Say, like, this is amazing, guys, I've just seen this. And like, if you do change your energy supplier, like, go on your social media and go, oh my God, guys, I had no idea that I could make this impact. And actually I've saved this amount of money, and here's a referral code if you want it. Like, I think a lot of us, we don't want to be that person. We don't want to, and when we're talking about like lifestyle choices or things like this, it's very easy for people to feel like they're being attacked. Do you know, like, so we're as eco-aware people, or however you want to describe it, for other people to feel like they're being attacked for their choices, for not being good enough, for not doing, and to have this sort of holier than thou, very worthy, whereas actually, I think the more that we can just almost share our own journey, in that, like I love a statistic, like, there's all these brilliant stats floating around about I don't know, fast fashion and things like that, and just to go, wow, I've just seen this on Instagram or whatever, and I'd never even thought about, I don't know, like, it's something like 270 litres of water needed to make a cotton t-shirt. Like, wow, I've just found, I had absolutely no idea. Do you know what, maybe I'm going to keep my cotton t-shirt for a bit longer, or I'm gonna look for one secondhand, so that you're not kind of going, you're a bad person because you've done this. You're going, wow, like, I had no idea about this, and probably because lots of people wouldn't have had any idea about that, and so it makes it much more kind of accessible. And I think if we are making changes, sometimes we don't want to share them because, again, we're worried that people will feel judged. But I think it's really important to share them in a very non-judgmental, non-confrontational way, because we need to normalize this stuff. It needs to not be the realms of the sort of green hippies and the it needs to be like to be able to see other ordinary people like us making these changes. And sometimes a message coming from somebody who we don't see as green will actually be far more powerful. There was a documentary, I don't know if anybody saw it, I think it was towards the end of 2018, by Stacey Dooley, which was all about fast fashion, and it was on primetime BBC. But I think because it came from Stacey Dooley, who does lots of sort of investigative journalism, and isn't like isn't necessarily an environmentalist, it maybe had more power, because had it been the same message coming from David Attenborough or Greta Thunberg or something like that, there would have been a proportion of people who would have just gone, I know what they're going to say, it's going to make me feel a bit crap, I'm not even going to listen, like, they're not my people. Whereas, there was all these people going, wow, like, she did it in a very accessible way. So I think that if we can be a part of that, if we can share as ordinary, normal, non-greenies the things that we're doing, A, we normalize it, and B, I think we make it a bit more accessible, and maybe other people will hear the message that would have tuned out otherwise.
And that's exactly what we're going to do with this interview, putting it out over the Town Council social media and website. So thank you so much, Jeff, for the work that you've done and for the book. So if people want to get hold of the book, where do they need to go?
Actually, here we go. Here's the book.
Sorry, that needed there you go.
Yeah.
You put it a bit late.
So it's available. You know, if you've got, I don't know if you guys got a local independent bookstore in Weston.
We've got a Waterstones, which
brilliant. So yeah, if they haven't got it, ask them to get it in. You know, beat the doors down, ask them to get it in. So it should be available, you know, in all the normal places online. You know, one of the easy steps I think we can all do for sort of sustainability is to avoid Amazon wherever possible. So there's a brilliant online bookstore called hive.co.uk that allows you to support your local independent bookstore as well. So yeah, just it's available in all the usual places. It's also an audiobook and an ebook as well.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jen. All right, take care.
Thank you.